So, recently in class, we've been talking about World War II and how it has been ravaging Europe. Now, a few of you might be wondering why America hasn't been getting involved in the conflict. Well, the answer is actually quite simple. It's isolationism. Now, what is isolationism? It is simply the idea of avoiding getting involved with other countries' issues. Now, after the First World War, a lot of Americans just didn't want to join in any other conflicts. They wanted to avoid going to war. They simply saw other countries fighting as just that, other countries. They shouldn't be getting involved with their disputes. And in fact, we should just stay over in America and deal with our own problems. You have to remember, we were just going through the Great Depression. A lot of people were thinking they've got their own problems to deal with. Why should we go over to Europe and try to solve theirs? So, in 1935, Congress is going to pass the Neutrality Act. This is a means to prevent the nation from being drawn into war. Now, over the next few years, they're going to strengthen this act by outlawing such things as making loans to warring countries, by trading goods to countries who are at war, these types of things. Now, as I stated before, Americans were focusing on their own problems. A lot of it having to do with the recovery from the Great Depression. That is still a major focus on a lot of Americans' minds. In fact, if you recall, we talked about Charles Lindbergh, the pilot who flew across the Atlantic. He became an outspoken supporter for the American First movement. This was essentially just Americans saying, we do not get involved in other countries' businesses. We put America first. We deal with our problems. Now, this does not quite mean that they are pacifist, which means they are against the use of military force. They are not anti-war. They just did not want to interfere with wars overseas. They were quite okay with defending the nation if it came down to that. However, they did not want to go seek out war in other countries. And a lot of people are going to listen to this movement. Millions of people will agree with this, including politicians. So even though the United States was attempting to maintain this neutral ground with the conflict going on in Europe, not everyone agreed with this. For example, President Franklin Roosevelt did not want to remain neutral. He found the actions of the dictators incredibly disturbing. In fact, after Japan invaded China in 1937, Roosevelt will give a speech in which he will say, "The peace, the freedom, and the security of 90% of the population of the world is being jeopardized by the remaining 10% who are threatening a breakdown of all international order and law." This will become known as the quarantine speech. So following this speech, a lot of isolationists are going to become upset with Roosevelt. They think that his actions will lead to the United States being dragged into the conflict. A North Dakotan Senator, Gerald P. Nye, will say about the speech, "It is a call upon the United States to police the world that chooses to follow insane leaders." Essentially, what he is saying is that Roosevelt wants to guide the world even though they are the ones who elected those leaders, i.e. Adolf Hitler. So in 1938, Roosevelt is going to seek funding from Congress. Now this funding is going to be to build some new Navy ships, some new naval vessels. This is going to prompt isolationists to call the ships as a means to fight wars away from the United States. They are not going to succeed in overturning this, and the ships will get built. Now, after the German invasion of Poland, Roosevelt is going to be able to convince Congress to change the terms of the Neutrality Act. Basically, we're going to make it from not selling anything to warring nations to what is called a cash and carry system. This is going to allow nations at war to buy American goods, just as long as they pay cash and pick up the goods in American ports. Now, Roosevelt's hoping that this will allow the Allies to slow Hitler's advances. Essentially, what he wants to do is supply the Allies without putting any American lives in danger. The threat of U-boats is still very real. Remember in World War I, whenever U-boats would sink trading vessels going to trade with European nations. They wanted to avoid that. So they have the Europeans come and pick up the goods in America and bring them back to Europe. This is going to prove to not work. As we've seen in previous classes, Hitler invades Europe and succeeds in taking over most of the land. This is going to cause Roosevelt to want to have an all-aid short-of-war policy to assist the Allies. For example, this is going to allow the president to trade 50 old American warships for 8 military bases, supplying the British with goods needed to fight off Hitler while gaining a little bit in return. So in 1940, we had another election on our hands, and Roosevelt is going to seek a third term. His opponent, Wendell Willkie, is going to be the Republican nominee. However, he's going to have very similar views on foreign policy as Roosevelt. And Roosevelt, he believes that with the circumstances surrounding the world's conflict, America should elect somebody who has experience in the White House. He believes that there shouldn't be somebody in the White House who is relatively green and unfamiliar with the policies in place. The voters are going to agree, and they're going to stick with Roosevelt, electing him for a third term, the first for any president. So following Roosevelt's election, Congress is going to pass the Lend-Lease Act, which allows the United States to send weapons to Great Britain regardless of their ability to pay. Roosevelt wants the United States to become the arsenal of democracy. So in August of 1941, Roosevelt and Churchill will meet off the coast of Canada and agree to the Atlantic Charter. This is a joint declaration that proclaims the goals of the United States and Britain to be the same. They both want to oppose Hitler and his allies. Now, this isn't a treaty between the two nations. This is not an alliance between the United States and Great Britain, but it is instead a message of hope for the rest of the world. All right, that ends our lesson for today. Tomorrow, we are going to get into the United States joining the war. All right, I will see you guys later. Bye.